Hello, this is your man Torn Ra Sematal Ree here, come at you with another historic truth and something that's very important that's happening in our world today here in the United States. Over the past 2 to 3 years, over 10,000 books, and I'm hearing the number as high as 14,000 books have been banned in the American school system. The reason for this is, well, they've stated a lot of reasons, but the main reason is that it's all smoke and mirrors. The main reason is that this is the first step to rewriting the history books. Now, this is very important. Why do they want to rewrite the history books? Because we're living in the age of Aquarius, the age of knowledge, the age of awakening, the age of the awoke, which they're saying is a bad thing. How can being awake be a bad thing? But we're in this age, so people are learning the truth. This causes fear in the elite puppet masters that has been pulling the strings. This is important because they do not want poor white children and poor white people learning true American history and true world history. Let's just go with world history. Because they learn the true history of the world, they're going to respect other cultures. Now, before we get too deep into this, let me define what I mean by poor white. A poor white, to the elite puppet masters pulling the strings, a poor white is anyone making under $400,000 a year, which would put most of American whites in that category. So we're talking about under $400,000 a year. So you're going to look at close to 90% of whites are going to fall in that category. Now, if their children learn the real history, they will be friends with people, other cultures, because they will respect them. They won't be looking down on them, and they will posse up and team up against them and overthrow the elites. This is why they want to rewrite history. Okay, if we look back, when we look back at history, there's a misconception or a lie that's been perpetuated by whites, the puppet masters, that it was Europe that civilized the world. And that is the furthest thing from the truth. Europe could not read or write until they came in contact with Black Africa. It is Africa that had the first universities in the world. Back in ancient Kemet, which was criminally renamed Egypt by Alexander the Great, all the temples are spiritual centers. So when you hear the word temple, think spiritual centers and education centers. That's what they were. They were universities. Okay, these universities started in Northeast Africa, and they were actually throughout Africa. And in fact, the first universities in Europe was built by the Moors and the Kemetic people to help educate European, and the instructors were Black. So Africa educated Europe. Europe could not read or write until it came in contact with Black Africa. In fact, the earliest alphabetic scripts were Samaria. And the word Samaria comes from Sumer. Sumer means blackheads. If you go back to beyond 6,000 years ago, and I want you to hit this book up if you get a chance. This book here is called The History and Geography of the Human Gene. I believe it's on page 148 that states that the white genome code, or the white genome code, white people do not show up until 6,000 years ago. The Sphinx, if you look at the water lines on the Sphinx, the corrosion line, that would date that back to over 10,000 years old. 10,000 years ago. So as of 10,000 years ago, this is an all-black planet. So if there ever was Atlantis that existed, would you hear a lot of Europeans bring up the Great Atlantis because they want to make you believe that the Atlanteans are white people? White people weren't around beyond 6,000 years ago. So if there ever was an Atlantis, it was Black African type people. Now, in the French Revolution, it was clear who the enemy was, because in France at the time, the majority of the population was white, so they could clearly see who their enemy was. In America, it's different. There's white, black, brown, and red. So the elite, rich puppet masters plays the people of color against each other. And they got poor whites in fear of thinking that the browns and the blacks are going to take us over. And that's what keeps them in power. That's why there's never been a true revolution of the people of poor or so-called middle class seizing the country and taking it back for itself. So this is what is happening. They're banning books, and banning the books is the first step to rewriting history. If they rewrite history, white kids will not respect kids of any other culture, and that way they will stay in power because they will never posse up and merge with these people. Now, my name is Torn Ross Sematari, and thank you for joining me for another historic fact. And as always, you know my line, hit me up on Facebook. I will confirm. Thank you very much. And until next time, peace out. It's been a pleasure always educating you people, doing business with you. Thank you very much.